the downside of giving up drink, because it might not be what you think it is. And I know the health benefits, and people talk about that on a regular basis and reasons why you should give up. But there is a darker side, which I'm going to talk about. And it's understandable why a lot of people do struggle with abstaining from alcohol, because we know it's not good for us. I mean, it's a poison. If it was good for you, you wouldn't get hangovers. So that's just one thing to remember. But if I go back to when I was a young lad in the 1970s and the early 80s, if you wanted to consume alcohol, you had to go to a public house, a pub, or you had to go to an off license, which was off sales from people who had licenses, or companies had licenses. They usually are attached originally to a public house, and they used to do off sales, and then the off license form came around in the sort of like the 70s and 80s, where they would apply for a liquor license and be able to sell liquor at certain times. It was restricted. It was never cheap. And if you went to a pub, it were restricted measures, which there are still today, but you had restricted times. You couldn't drink before 11 or after 3. And then you couldn't open until 5 o'clock. And on a Sunday, it was 12 till 2. So there was a lot of restrictions around booze, and people couldn't get hold of it easily, and it was expensive. Now, I grew up in that period, and also my grandfather was an alcoholic, and he effectively killed himself drinking. Had cirrhosis of the liver. My uncle was an alcoholic. So growing up as a young kid, an impressionable teenager, this had an effect on me, and I didn't see drinking as a positive thing. And it wasn't until I got in my 20s that I did start to drink. But here's the thing, right? I followed the path, and I got into an industry, the estate agency, and at the time, estate agency was very sort of a boozy-led industry. It was there was a drinking culture within that industry, and I remember going out in the afternoons, on a Friday afternoons, finishing early. We used to go out in the evenings, and then we pop into a nightclub, and it was a social scene, and it's a social scene which drove my drinking habits at the time. And then when I went self-employed, I had more time on my hands, and so during the day I'd meet friends for a drink in the afternoon, and it became a habit, really. That's what I found. It became a habit. So what are you doing this afternoon? Oh, nothing. Let's go down the pub and have a few jars. And that was sort of my drinking life. And I never used to go out really that much of an evening. I'd rather drink in the afternoon and get home at a reasonable time. I was never one for staying out till 3 or 4 in the morning. If I did, it was rare. I did go for a short period when I was single doing that. But most of my drinking was done when everybody else wasn't drinking, and I preferred that. But, you know, it's a very different world today compared to what it was when I was drinking. Also, I think the advocation of changing of liquor laws, liquor licenses, and you can now get booze 24/7. You can even go to a petrol station, for goodness sake, and go and buy booze. I mean, how crazy is that? And there's not really much restriction. And I was doing a little bit of research before this podcast, and you can go and buy 18 cans of Carlsberg Lager for £13. It's just over £1 a pint. I mean, that's ridiculous. Ridiculous. No wonder people are drinking more nowadays. And I think it's a generational thing. My generation tended to have more of a problem with booze than the younger generation. My kids, they take it or leave it. It's not the end of the world. They like a drink, but they don't. Because my generation, it was restricted. They grew up with a different world with booze. You can, go to the supermarket and load up with. We used to do booze cruises to France to get cheap beer. That's that was the extent of the cheap beer if you wanted it. And then if you had to get through customs, and if you had too much, then it was confiscated. So there were different times. And I think people of my generation do find it more difficult than the younger generation. And this comes down to how different it is, how harder it is. I remember when I decided to give up. And you've got to remember, I want you to understand this. Booze is a drug, right? Regardless of which way you look at it, it's a legal, socially accepted drug. I haven't got a problem with it. Each to their own. I don't want to do it, but it's a socially acceptable drug, and it's the only drug that you would get ridiculed for not participating in. And how many times have I been somewhere? I go, what's the matter with you? You're boring. You're a killjoy. How are you going to enjoy yourself? I got ridiculed for not participating in something that I wanted to give up genuinely. And I gave up for lifestyle choice. I had in my mind, I wanted to be teetotal. That was the goal for me. I didn't want to, I don't use the word like I've been sober I'm teetotal. That's the bottom line. And when you say you're giving up, automatically people jump to the conclusion, oh, you've got a problem then. Well, no, this is a lifestyle choice. I haven't got a problem. And it highlights their problems in a lot of the examples that I experienced. It highlights other people's problems that they might have an issue with booze. And that's the darker side, you see, because if people were to encourage you, go. I mean, and I'm seeing it a lot more now with online. People are encouraging people to abstain from drinking. But I think when we use the word sober instead of being teetotal, that would indicate that someone may have a problem, i.e. I've been sober. Because what, are you drunk all the time then? So it's how we position it in our own minds. And I think the key for me, if anyone wants to give up booze and they're having a struggle with it, is to see yourself as teetotal as opposed to maybe being sober. And I do remember when I gave up, I did try and give up beforehand, and all these social elements came up. But all I wanted to do was cut down. I didn't want to drink as much. Well, that in itself causes a problem because then you're a drinker still. Does that make sense? It's like smokers. They either smoke or they don't smoke. And I think once you make that decision, I don't want to drink anymore, I'm going to be teetotal, it's an easier decision. It's an easier point to come from to abstain. I practice temperance. That's the way I see it. Temperance is abstaining from alcohol. So I just wanted to sort of touch on this because it's quite an interesting subject. And I see people saying to me, oh, yeah, I'd love to give up, but I can't. And I think, well, you can. You just got to want to enough. And it's understanding that it doesn't matter what other people think, say. It's up to them. That's their business, right? That's got nothing to do with you. It's what's going inside you, inside your head, and how you position it in your mind. That I see, and this is the way I position it. And maybe you can potentially utilize this way of thinking. I saw power in being teetotal. I saw power in abstaining from alcohol as opposed to I was missing out on something. And that's something I've never been one for this FOMO, fear of missing out. Doesn't worry me. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. I don't mind being the designated driver. That's what I am now. I mean, like a bloody cab when I go out with mates of mine. And they all know I don't drink, so they don't give me any stick. And it's it's a long time. I mean, it's coming up for 18 years next year that I haven't drank for. So everyone knows that I don't drink, and they accept that. They don't give me any stick over it. No, we was away with some mates over in the Alps doing a cycling tour, and we was giving each other sort of nicknames, and my nickname was Perrier because I drink a lot of Perrier water because that's the sort of thing I drink. So, but that, to me, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. So that's a positive thing. So just drop some comments in the comment box below on your journey of giving up, and think about how you can position it in your mind on how you see. I want to abstain from drinking alcohol, but I don't want to be ridiculed. But how am I going to position it in my own mind and feel comfortable with that? So I know it's just a quick one today, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because it's quite an important subject, and I think it's got a lot of traction at the moment. And I think everyone talks about the health benefits, but they don't actually tell you about the downsides, which is the ridiculing and the social unacceptance of you giving up booze.